I'm the programme leader for UHI's BSc in Sustainable Development. It's actually one of UHI's longest running distance learning and online programmes. It's been running either by distance or by online for 25 years. So it started as a rural development programme, and it's moved into sort of a wider sustainable development programme. So I'm just, Scott asked me just to talk a little bit about online learning and teaching. I guess some of you will have, some experience of that, and obviously I'm seeing your experience coming through already with using your Menti and things like that. So I'm going to talk really about how we do things, and sort of some simple things that we've learned over the time that we've been doing it, which I hope might be useful for others who are thinking about it. So my focus is really going to be on the process rather than the content of the sort of sustainability side of things. It's more about how we do it. So I'm happy to talk about, the content and these sort of things with you after as well, if that's of interest. But it's really a focus more on how we go about it, if it might be of use to anybody who's trying to go online for the first time. So I've tried to kind of just break it down into three kind of areas, three things to think about when you're going online. And I just thought it was a neat way of capturing it. There's the pedagogy, there's the practicalities, and then there's what I've called here the personalities, which I'll explain a little bit more. So, we've all become kind of used to being online in this kind of way, doing our Zoom meetings, doing our webinars. But when it comes to teaching, I think it's quite important to recognise that online, we shouldn't expect it to be the same as face-to-face, and we shouldn't try to, transfer exactly what we have and what we do that we do face-to-face into a kind of online environment. It's a different way of doing things. There's different kind of opportunities and challenges in having contact mainly online with our students. So just, I would say, rather than, Scott suggested that we could maybe talk a little bit about, methods of learning and things that we use, technologies that we use and things like that, which I will do. But I think the step before that is even stepping it further back than that and recognising that it won't be the same as teaching face-to-face, and that we have to actually take a bit of a different approach completely to how we go about teaching online. And the way we kind of describe it to our students is it's a move from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. I mean, I think all universities and colleges are probably moving away from this idea that the lecturer is standing up and telling the students everything they need to know, which they write down and then they regurgitate an exam. I think, we're all moving away from that. But particularly online, the way we approach it is that, we don't tend to focus most of our energies on, doing a lecture. We see our role more as, it says here, as being a guide on the side. So it's what we call the flipped classroom. The idea is that students do some of their preparation before they have a live session with you, before they actually talk to anybody about it. We provide our lecture notes, or what we would call our lecture notes, to the students in advance. So we don't just go live and tell students everything they need to know. We give them all that information using our virtual learning environment. So it could be a PDF of lecture notes, it could be a PowerPoint with audio, enhanced PowerPoint, it could be a video that you've recorded, but we give all of that to the students sort of in advance, and then we schedule live sessions to kind of talk to them and chat them through it. I'll talk a little bit more about other techniques that we use, but the idea is that the students do a lot of their preparatory work and learning by our direction rather than just us talking at them. And the idea is that it's a kind of collaborative setup. So we try to make the point that they learn as much from each other as they do from the lecturer, which I guess is the same in a lot of university situations. They often get a lot out of what other students are saying. So we encourage them to kind of not to expect the lecturer to come along and have the right answer for everything, and not there to be one answer that the lecturer will give you, but to work together to explore ideas. And especially in something like sustainability, where there are so many different strands and they all link in with each other, everyone usually has something that they can bring to the table and learn from each other. So we really encourage students to come with their own backgrounds and experiences. And I mean, just to note at this point, we do tend to have more mature students coming onto our programme. Traditionally, they tend to be students maybe that are working maybe in some related sector or wanting to change career. They tend to be more mature students. We don't tend to have as many of the students that are straight from school. So you do have to, bear in mind who your cohort is when you're thinking about how you'll develop it. But and that can make a difference. But I think it's particularly our students, more mature students, come with a lot of ideas and a lot of experiences that they can, help other students learn from. So we really, take that kind of approach to how we go about things, and we try to make that clear from when everyone starts the course. So, so just in terms of the kind of, how we go about it, we have a range of different activities that we use with the students. So we use synchronous and asynchronous activities. I guess, as I say, a lot of you will be familiar with this kind of thing. You'll do this anyway. So synchronous activities are those that are, so I've just seen the chat flashing up. I wasn't keeping an eye on it. If anybody wants to butt in, or if Scott wants to add anything while I'm talking, just please feel free. Just stop me. Yeah, so synchronous activities, they're the kind of things that happen live. As I said, we don't tend to run lectures. We tend to run sort of tutorial, less formal chat sessions. And I think that's partly because I don't think you should expect necessarily to run as many live online sessions as you might have had face-to-face class time. You know yourselves that it can be quite tiring being on a screen all the time. And so we try to prioritise and use the time on screen and live with the students to get them thinking themselves, ask them questions, let them contribute, rather than using that time for us to sort of say things that we could have presented to them in another way in advance. So we try to encourage, to be interactive, encourage student participation with things like we've seen today already, Menti, Answer Guard and Turning Point. They're other examples of how you can break out from the chat and the video itself and use other tools to engage people's attention. The system that we use at the moment is WebEx meetings. So there are things you can do in that, like polls. You can set up breakout rooms for small groups of students to chat to each other. You can get students to annotate PowerPoints and things like that. So there's lots of things you can do while you're having your synchronous activities, just to break it up, not have them going on for too long, moving things along, making sure that people are all contributing. And just on the other side of that, we also encourage a lot, as I said, a lot of our students are part-time. They're students who have got other, things going on in their lives. So we have quite a lot of asynchronous activities that we set up. So things that they can do through the week whenever they're able to. So we've got our virtual learning environment that we use is Brightspace at the moment. We shifted to that last year from Blackboard. So there's tools within that you can use. Discussion forums is what we tend to use quite a lot, because you can do different activities on that. There's also the possibility of doing quizzes, surveys, blogs, wikis, just to break things up. So different activities that you can do within your class that just provides a bit of variety, and also means that students can be working on different types of activity themselves, and ones that suit their kind of learning style. So you would set a time frame for these and ideally link them into the content or the assessments, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I would say don't just use lots of tools just for the sake of it. I had a tutorial this morning where I tried to use a few of these tools, like annotating, and some of the students weren't able to do that from the system that they were using. If they were accessing it from a mobile phone, it was more difficult. So, sometimes that can cause more trouble, and actually what people just want is to be able to talk to other people and just to, have a chat without any fancy accessories. So, I would say don't just use lots of different things just for the sake of it. The most important thing is really to make the connection with the students and to share information in the kind of most effective way possible for everybody. And so just a word on assessments. I know not everybody here is involved in teaching or setting assessments, and I know some courses are more the assessments are more set in advance. For example, you know, your HNCs and HNDs are a little bit less flexible. But if you can, the move to online means that it might be worth rethinking assessments so that you can make sure that your students are engaging continuously throughout the time. What we find sometimes happens with the move to online is that people sort of disappear and don't engage continuously, and it's very hard to find them and get them back. So we try to build assessment into as many of the continuous activities as we can in a sort of light touch way. Just some examples of things that we do are here: glossaries, timelines, blogs, debates, audio enhanced presentations, multiple choice questions, and student-led seminars. The idea of this is just that you want your students to have students are very rational, as you'll know. They want to do something that gets them results, and they want to take part in activities that they feel is of benefit to them. So if you can link something continuous within your classes, where they're building towards assessment and getting marks as a result, then that helps keep them engaged and keep them interested. So our assessments there's no exams in our course. We base it on continuous assessment and the more traditional essays or reports or policy briefs, partly just to make sure that we've got this engagement from students and we can kind of encourage that as we go along. So I know that's maybe not of as much relevance to everybody, but just a point to think about. If you are able to adapt it, it does help with engagement. So just moving on to the kind of practicalities. I've called it practicalities. I think the thing about when you're doing things online is it's important to be very organised and very consistent, particularly if students have been used to face-to-face teaching and been walked through things, you know, in person. Sometimes going on to a wholly online environment's a little bit alien, and it can look quite daunting, and particularly if there's a lot of information. I mean, the amount of information you can get on the internet and put into a virtual learning environment is unlimited, so it can be quite overwhelming. So a couple of things that we do just to make things easier for students is that we try to encourage everyone to make all the courses that students are doing look similar. So we've got some key things that all students will look at. For example, we've got learning resources, module information and assignments. That's in every module and they all look the same. We've then organised all our resources week by week so students know what to expect. And we follow that up with weekly announcements to explain what they have to do and when, just to keep them on track. So that's something that we find really helps with, you know, making sure that we're teaching and, you know, in a way that the students can follow. The other thing about going online is, I think that's important, is managing expectations. So firstly, I think it's important that the students know what your role is. As I said, we emphasise that we're there sort of to scaffold their knowledge and be the guide on the side and help them work through the materials and the learning, but also to manage expectations of what they can and should do, because it can be quite difficult when everyone's at home alone trying to get through things. They can feel quite daunted and quite isolated. And I think it's important to emphasise, you know, they can only do what they can do, and they have to, you know, fit this in around other responsibilities, and there are difficulties sometimes in doing that. So we try to explain, you know, what's critical to do in a certain week and other things that you can leave. And I think it's important to make sure that students realise, you know, everyone's in the same boat, and that there are other pressures on their time. The other thing we've found being wholly online is obviously, you know, there's a lot of talk about how people behave online is not how they behave in real life. And we see that from some of the things you read on Twitter. So we try to talk, you know, to the students about what they called netiquette, or how to behave online. And it is quite different. You know, the way you communicate with people online, particularly if it's in the written form, can be taken the wrong way. We've got tips for how to engage in discussions online that we should probably share on Twitter. You know, it's about, you know, not using capital letters. You know, don't appear as if you're shouting, and you know, think about the way things will be construed. Jokes don't always work. All of these kind of things that you need to think about when you're communicating in a different way. So all of these kind of things are important to helping students just understand what's expected of them, and helping things run smoothly from the teaching staff point of view as well. And just on that point, thinking about personalities, I think there could be a danger when you go online that you kind of forget that we're all still human, and we also like contact with, human contact, and behind every piece of writing and every name there's a person, and sometimes if you don't see them, it's easy to forget that. So I think it's important to, when you're working with people online, as you've got your topic support network and as you're carrying on online and you're seeing people's faces, it's nice to see people's faces and encourage people to share, their personalities, their interests, what their motivations and drivers are. That makes a big difference. That really helps keep people engaged. The other thing I think is important is, know the people you're working with. Think about how they would like to communicate. We in the past quite often, when we've been doing live sessions, have used the text-based chat rather than the audio and video. So we would post a question or discussion topic, and people would come in their own time in response to that. Because, well, it started because there was limited bandwidth in a lot of the rural areas that we had people joining from. But even now, sometimes when we ask students what do they prefer, some still prefer to use the chat rather than the audio or video. Some prefer just to have audio and have their video off. It helps them concentrate. So I think it's important. I think you can be flexible. There's so many tools, and I think you can be flexible and, get to know the group that you're dealing with and ask them how they would like to communicate. And I think it's important to kind of keep up the social side of things as well. You can still do group work when you're online. It's a bit more tricky, but it's still possible. There's ways and means of doing it, and I think it's important to kind of encourage that interaction. So we use, as I said, discussions and different forum that people can get in contact with each other. We've got a student society that carries on online as well. They communicate with each other both within the university system, but they've also got Facebook pages, WhatsApp groups, all of these kind of things. And I think particularly for the younger students who've left school and just gone away, or perhaps even stayed at home and are starting university and college, I think it's important to let them have that informal space that's not part of the system to be able to chat with each other. And I think it's also really important. I mean, I think this is one of the things that we should all think about, in these kind of times when we are, a wee bit more isolated working at home. Think about, our mental health, not just of the students, but of ourselves as well. I think it's harder to split the work-life balance when you're working at home all of the time. There's a tendency, I'm sure, for a lot of people for it to creep into extra days of the week that you wouldn't normally do. The other thing about mental health and students, myself and a couple of colleagues at Lewis Castle College, we've put together a mental health toolkit. It's intended for staff, university and college staff. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's available. We shared it on the UHI website, but other colleges have made use of it, and universities. The idea was to sort of raise awareness of mental health conditions and how they kind of present themselves, both face-to-face and online, because I'm sure you can appreciate when you're only dealing with students online, it can sometimes be hard to gauge the things that you would gauge when they're coming into a class with you. So we put together this resource to help staff sort of identify things that might be warning signs or ways to deal with things. This came about from experiences we'd had ourselves, with students who we knew were struggling with their mental health, and it was manifesting itself in different ways, and it was tricky to deal with. So we thought it would help other staff to sort of identify what can be done and the best way to approach things online. So I think that's something that's really important now that everybody's going online. I think we need to think about that side of things as much as the learning and the passing on the information that we're here to do. I think it's important to think about how people are feeling behind the screens. So just to kind of summarize and finish off, I would say the main thing, if you are switching from teaching face-to-face to online, just basically keep it simple. Like I say, the main thing is that people want the kind of connection of some description, and they want to have a simple way of getting access to the information. Try to keep it kind of friendly. If it becomes an environment that people are comfortable going into and communicating with others with, that makes a big difference. And just keep an eye on everyone's well-being, your own included, because it can be quite stressful. I know there's a lot of colleagues I have across the university and across the college that are moving online for the first time, and it's very stressful trying to switch to a different way of thinking. So there's always people out there that will give a hand, and I think it's important to ask for help if you need it. So that's all I really want to say. I'd really like to hear if anyone is teaching online already, or if anyone's got any experiences that want to share, or any questions. And I'm really interested to hear more about how you embed sustainability across the curriculum as well. That's something that we're just starting to develop a bit more at UHI. So it'd be great to hear more.